Let's see how you do under pressure. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm I get to the paper, boy. Extra, extra. Fuck with me, you know that I got it.
All right, what is up, guys? This is Dustin from Life by the Horns again, and today I've got with me Mr. Miles Welch. And if you don't know anything about Miles, a little bit about him. Miles was a platoon sergeant in the Marines, and then following that, spent about 20 years at one of the largest churches in the United States, and then transitioned from there to an executive director role for Mr. John Maxwell. And then beyond that, has started two ventures of his own now, and we're really going to emphasize a lot of conversation later in this about the latest one, Northstar Training Solutions. Miles, how are you doing today?
Awesome. Now, that's not 100% accurate. I was part of the John Maxwell Leadership Center while I was on staff at the church. So those were at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I did not transition from one to the other. That was all, at the same time.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into a little bit more about that here in a minute. But I want to start off and ask, with your diverse career journey, how did your experiences as a platoon sergeant in the Marines shape your initial views on leadership?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about the military and love about my time in the military is you get a lot of responsibility at a young age. I mean, I was like, I remember directing helicopters, and I'm 20, and there's lives and dollars and all this stuff. So I love the how much responsibility the military gives young people. I thought that was really beneficial. But becoming a platoon sergeant, I just remember that was my first real taste of leadership. It's where I fell in love with leadership. And it's where I learned how to operate in such a way that people wanted to follow me. And I'll never forget, dude. One of the meetings we had, the other platoon sergeants were like, "Why do your guys follow you better than our guys follow us?" And that was like this milestone moment of, okay, that's a I should listen to that and I should think about that. But the truth is because I was leading my guys better. I was more invested in their development and their growth. I was caring for them more than the other guys were. And because of that, my guys wanted to follow me more. And so that was a huge moment for me. That's followed me my entire career, that I want to be the type of person that other people choose to follow.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. What do you think that that's something that the military taught you, or is that something that you picked up on your own?
No, I honestly think I picked up on my own with that. I don't think that, like, the military is very rank heavy.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to leverage your position to make people do things. In the military, it's very clear. It's like stripes and insignias, and the rank matters. But even in that environment, the very best leaders somehow cut through that and got to a more at that level, people follow you because they have to. But at a human level, people choose you. Like, we choose who we follow. And even in the military, that's true. And even in the military, that mattered, and that made a difference into how people choose to follow you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So after the military, you transitioned into pastoring one of the largest churches in the United States. How did this role differ from military leadership, and what key lessons did you learn while you were there?
Yeah, well, some of it, Dustin, like, again, I worked for several churches before I landed at the larger church. And there was a time when I was actually in the Marine Corps and working at a church. I was in the reserves and working at a church. And so I would, I was a sergeant, but I had spent the month working in the church. And then that Friday night, when I put on my uniform and went with the Marines, I was always softer. And I would be like, "Would you guys mind doing this?" And they'd be like, Sergeant Welch, what are you talking about? And then after 2 days of being in the Marines, I'd come back to the church and be like, you do this. And they'd be like, whoa. And so there was a kind of a tone difference, but leadership is leadership, and it's all the same. The one thing I will say about working in a church, and I think probably this is true of nonprofits, and we underestimate this, there's something about, like, you don't have actual leverage like we were talking about in the military, where you have the stripes and I can put you in jail, or if I'm a boss,
Right.
If I'm a boss, I can fire you, or if I'm a parent, I can ground you. In the nonprofit world, and particularly in the church world, you don't have that. And so there is this, I have to, so that there is in some ways a more pure leadership reality, that I have to be the kind of person that other people choose to follow, because they don't have to come back. They're choosing to come back, and they're choosing to give authority to my words. That it's like in the church, they're paying your bills.
Right.
And so there is a higher form of leadership, or at least, that it's more pure, that the influence is more direct, and it's more like actual leadership than some positional thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So 20 years,
right.
Roughly inside of the church, and then a pivot.
Yeah, dude.
What happened there?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, life, so I worked in that one church for 20 years and kind of went up through the ranks. And I would just say my marriage always had holes.
Okay.
But as my career grew, and as my daughters grew up and moved out of the house, those holes became significant. And, my marriage, came to an end.
Yeah.
And dude, it was a nightmare. And in the church space, you can't be a pastor and have your marriage come to an end like that. And so for me, it wasn't just going through a divorce. It was going through a divorce and losing my career options while I was at the height of my game, dude. And not just that, but the community side of that also. I went from like top of the game to like not a lot of community, not my marriage and all that comes with that, and then the career. All of that happened. I ended up actually living in my mentor's basement for a year.
That's got to be wild.
Yeah. Not how I thought it was going to go, dude. Not how I thought life was going to go. So that was my head was spinning. That was right as COVID, by the way, was starting.
Man, so walk us through that. So, I mean, you've got all this leadership and all this resilience that you've built up. You're at the height of your career. COVID then hits, and everything about your life as you know it is now changed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was, I'll never forget waking up in the basement the first morning and being like, what the hell am I going to do? The basement had been used for some homeschooling. And so there was a whiteboard on that there. And I just went to the board and I wrote on the board, do what you can do. Because I needed to focus on the small things that I could do. And I wrote that and I underlined underlined can. And that stayed on that whiteboard for a year while I lived there. And that was my go-to was, okay, day one, I can't, I can call people, I can heal, I can process, I can find the people in my life who are smarter than me and ask for some wisdom. And I just started, some of the shocking things were the size of what I could do previously to it was overwhelming what I could no longer do, that I had to I could obsess over that. And so I chose to just, no, I'm I'm going to just focus on what I could do. And I just started. And when you do that, what you can do grows. And eventually I talked to one of my friends who said, yeah, I've done some work with him and some coaching and consulting with him. And he said, I'm going to get some guys on a Zoom, and I want you to talk about how you would be thinking about navigating COVID. And that became the beginning of a new career. By the way, like the low point was when, and I don't mean to diminish anybody who has this job, but coming from where I came from, this was hard, but it was just, I'm not above anything. I went to this local Kroger, and they had a job opening for overnight shelf restocking. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can do that. And so I'm applying for that job, but all the smart people I was talking to were telling me, no, you're like, you just need to get directly into leadership development and coaching and training, and don't have, they called it a tweener job. They said, just start with what you're going to do, which is really good wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, and I think back to your point, just so many of us get caught up in the anxiety of all these decisions, and then the stress sometimes of lack thereof, and to just focus on what is in your control,
right?
And then keep the thought there. So
well, if you obsess, like we as humans are prone to obsess over what we both care about and is not in our control, because that's where we're the most vulnerable in life.
Right.
And the problem is that makes you passive and anxious, because you can't, I don't get to decide I don't get to decide what my children do. That's their decision.
Mm-hmm.
What I get to decide is what I do as their dad. That's my decision. That's what I control.
Yep.
But don't we obsess over what our kids are doing? I mean, and it's just, it makes you passive and it makes you anxious, and that's not helpful. And that's not a posture that leads to anything productive. And so I don't know why, but I wrote that on the board, and boy, that became, and again, some of it was really like, I can heal, I can read, I can rest, I can journal. I mean, those are things that, those are little things that, but I needed to keep focus on what I can do.
Yeah.
And eventually, I'm sitting here with you.
Right.
And I'm still kind of just doing what I can do.
Right. No, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, man.
So the opportunity that you had to work alongside of John Maxwell, who is, I believe, has the most number one New York Times bestselling leadership books in the world. Were there any like key moments or golden nuggets that you took away from that experience?
Yeah. And now working and being the executive director of the John Maxwell Leadership Center did not put me all day in contact with John Maxwell. And so, there was a few times that we were together and interacting, but by and large, the John Maxwell Leadership Center was a partnership with him and the church. And most of what that did was it gave us a national platform of influence for, we had organizations from across the country wanting to be invested in. And my job was to help navigate how that all went. And I think at one time I did some research. We had we had about 150 what we called unsolicited requests for assistance from different organizations every month.
Wow.
And so that, 5 a day, every day, of just somebody somewhere, somebody's friend, somebody's email, hey, I got a question about this, that, or the other, or this, that. And my job was to navigate, and figure out what to do about that and to lead that out. And so that's at least part of what I did leading the John Maxwell Leadership Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. I want to talk about leadership.
Yeah.
I guess at a little more tactical level.
Sure.
Transitioning from an individual contributor to a leader can be extremely challenging for people. Based on your experiences, what are the key skills that leaders need to develop early on in that transition?
Yeah, it's that is the key transition, by the way, that most people, miss. And what I find crazy is going from, let's just say, for an example, being these, a really good salesperson
Mhm.
to being the leader of the sales team is a completely different job with completely different skill sets,
Yep.
completely different, and yet there's very little training, or even, we just assume if you're the best salesperson, so here's the sales team, and that's not always effective, you know, and so empathy, critical conversations, meetings, decision making, delegation, time, not just time management, but resource management are all the new skills that you didn't have.
Yeah.
Empathy, and again, some of it is not so much the skill, but like when you go from being the, on the team to leading the team, everyone decides if they like that decision or not.
Yeah.
Everyone has to renegotiate who you are. And so before you can actually do any leadership thing, you have to be credible in some way to do that, or the team, again, you become the leader that they have to follow but don't necessarily want or choose to follow. And so there's a it's funny, I was reading this book that was like the 5 things leaders do, and the whole first chapter was about credibility, and it said before you can do what leaders do, you have to be the leader that people want to do what leaders do. And so credibility is a big deal, and that's where, like if you don't care about other people, if you're so self-centered, and sometimes, again, let's talk about the salesperson who's crushing their numbers but doesn't help the team grow, and then they become the sales team leader. Well, everyone, if you have built into the water that you're in it only for yourself, well, becoming the leader might be the credibility side of that might be really hard to overcome.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think um, I've been super guilty of this with team members, where you take someone who is a great contributor and you have this assumption that if you move them into this leadership type role, their abilities will cascade down to the team. And it never seems to work.
No. Well, statistically, like 70% of people fail in their first management role within a couple years. They're not doing well. And
Yeah.
and most of it is almost nobody receives training. And so they're just, again, here's an entirely new skill set that you need, that no
Yeah.
one's going to tell you what that skill set is or how to develop it. But good luck.
Yeah, I remember working at a Fortune 50 company over a decade ago, and went through their management training process and everything. And the only things that were learned in that entire process was how to do an inventory correctly,
Right.
how to understand, KPIs inside of the department, how to schedule people effectively. None of it was any of the soft skills or anything that are associated with leadership. It was just all hard skills, all numbers, and that was it. So knowing that so many businesses at all levels are
Right.
lacking in helping properly transition people from that key contributor to what is now a manager or leader. What is your recommendation on what they should do?
Yeah, well, I mean, training is the answer, right? You go back. Actually, I was looking at some statistics. Let's talk about the breakdowns.
Okay.
Okay, the first one is just retention. Like people don't leave companies; they leave bosses.
Correct.
And retention costs, like with whatever the salary is of that position, I've read as low as 50% to replace, as high as 200%.
Wow.
To replace. So you think about how much time, and just think about the time you spend having to now go find the next person because of some manager that wasn't. I mean, so that's, to me, that's a really, retention's huge. The second one is engagement. That if an employee is disengaged, like teams that are disengaged are 75% less productive than teams that are engaged. And when they do engagement statistics and talk about what creates engagement, 70% of what creates engagement is the direct manager. And so, this is why in larger organizations, you can have these teams that are like highly productive and then another one that's underperforming. And it's like, well, yeah, the direct manager is most of what's, causing the difference there. And so for me, when I talk to an organization, one of the things that I'm, unless they have something in place with which most do not, I was actually doing some research on it this morning. Only 5% of businesses have some kind of training for managers, first-time managers. So when I talk to a business, one of the things that I'm pretty sure of is that if they have a management, that management needs some kind of training.
Correct.
Yeah. And just, they haven't been trained, and that's costing them more than they know, probably.
Yeah.
And especially, if you're the owner of a business and you are trapped in the daily because you have no one that you can look at and say, okay, I need you to, and so like think about, I was writing this down this morning. I wrote this, the problem is the less you invest in your people, the more you are stuck in the daily. The more you're stuck in the daily, the less you're working on the bigger picture. The less you're working on the bigger picture, the more you're missing opportunities. And the more you're missing opportunities, the less you're reaching your bottom line potential.
And that's spot on.
That's it, dude. That's like when I talk to people, it's like I can't even, and I don't have time, and I'm not maybe an expert at, at investing in my team. I know but they need it. And so training is where I would start for sure. They need some kind of training.
Yeah. Cause it 100% has a direct impact on their bottom line.
For sure.
And the business owner's time.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, one of the things to consider is, the first step is training. The second step, training of management, and just getting people where you as a business owner or leader or higher up executive, where you have people operating the daily, that doesn't necessarily grow your business, but it frees you up.
Correct.
And what you do with the time you get back is actually what grows your business. And if you can never get to that time, then your business is always going to be dictated to you by opportunities that seem random because you're not leading, you're not on front of anything.
No. And funny, we were just talking about this prior to jumping on here, that for business owners and even like executives and whatnot, that trying to find that proper, and I'm not going to say balance, but use of time where you have to deal with managerial type stuff and the creative growth stuff that really moves the needle. And this is what's going to change the game in the business. But what I've always tried to encourage people through any of the consulting that we did was I know it's going to be tough and take some time away from what you want to do. But if you take a step back and really spend time with people, whether it be the owner or bringing a consultant in, make that investment and you'll be able to take a quantum leap forward.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like half of what I do in coaching is I try to chase, the owner or the executive out of the office. I'd literally say, your job today is to sit on a rock, stare at a cloud and think.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, I got this and this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, we need to build a team that does all those things, because the thing that no one else can do the bigger picture. No one else. And so if you're not involved in the bigger picture, no one is. And so we got to get people to do what they can do so that you can do what only you can do. And then the business has a much likelier chance of growing as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Resiliency is often mentioned as a great trait for leaders. Could you share maybe some of your personal challenges with training for ultra marathons or going through them that have helped you build resiliency and how it applied to leadership?
Yeah, man. I mean, so I used to run ultra marathons. I don't know, when do you get to say, when do you stop getting to say I'm an ultra marathon runner? Because I think it's been 10 maybe 8 years since I've run.
Okay.
So I don't know. Am I still an ultra marathon runner? Or
I would say 10 years is the cutoff.
Okay. So I got 2 years left, if by my account. And I never won a race, but I never did not finish a race. Twice I was the very last person to cross the finish line. And those were tough races, but I never quite didn't, it's called DNF, did not finish.
Yeah.
I never did DNF'd a race. And I'll tell you, I think resilience comes from by the way, my favorite moment in the race, I was finishing one race and it was a 31-mile race, which is called a 50K.
Yeah.
And you're finishing on the uphill and I'm coming in and everyone's cheering. And so I'm excited and I'm really pumped for this thing. And then I realized that there's this older lady, probably in her 60s, and nobody's cheering for me. They're all cheering for her to beat me to the finish line.
Man.
And she did. And so that was like, that sucks. That's really sad. The only thing that I feel like I won in the end is she, as we were sitting there eating at the end, she collapsed into, she's fine. I know she's fine, but the fire department had to help her out. So I feel like I won in the end. Anyways, it's probably not good or healthy, but as far as resilience, there are these glamour moments, like crossing the finish line moments. And then there is the grind, which is by training, I would run 50 miles a week, to train on the bulk weeks. And then you kind of cut off before you run. But let's think about what 50 miles a week of training is. If you're going to run 5 times a week, that's average of 10 miles every time you run.
Yeah.
And the way ultra marathon running works is you train you want to do 2 days back to back long because you're building that endurance. And so I'd run 5 days a week. And what I would do is 5, 5, 5, 17, 20, something like that. And the 17, 20 were back to back.
Yeah.
And because it's a different kind of running than trying to get it's not fast. It's just staying with it. And so if you don't love the grind, if you only love the glamour, you're never going to finish. You're never going to be great at resilience. You have to learn to love the grind. Just here I am again, another 17 mile. Here I am just getting another mile done. I used to run in a 2.5 mile loop, and imagine running 17 miles and then the next day running 20 miles on a 17 mile, on a 2.5 mile loop.
Yeah.
And if you don't love the actual process of if it's only about the race and the finish and the thing, you're not going to do very well at this thing. And that's true. And it's true in everything, right? Like building a business, there's a lot of grind and very little glamour moments. And if everything's about the glamour moments, then you don't have an appetite or a stomach for the grind. But the greatness is in the grind. The greatness is in the, I do the gym quite a bit, and it's like I show up at the gym at 5, 6 almost latest every morning. And there's a group of people, and I don't know what many of them or what they do in life or whatever, but I respect the grind.
Right.
I mean, they're there. The ones that are there at 5 are there every day at 5. And I don't know much about them. They're there every day at 5. And there's something about that. If you don't love that, if that's not in you to love, resilience is always going to be a struggle for you.
Yeah.
That's for resilient. So there's some people that need the glamour, they need it. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I like the grind.
No,
Give me the grind.
That's cool. I heard to your point, the crossing the finish line, I heard a really cool quote today that I think really resonates. And it was, and I'm paraphrasing, but everybody likes, or everybody wants what you have now.
Right.
But they don't want to go through what it took to get you there.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
And I was there was an old book, the president of USC, Southern California.
Okay.
He said, everyone wants to do the president, meaning do the job. No one wants to be the president, like the actual, like what it is. Or everyone wants to be the president. No one wants to no one wants to actually do the work. They just want the prestige of having the title.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that like, there's a lot of work,
Well, it's constantly in those leadership roles. It's constantly getting kicked in the teeth every day. And then when you finally cross the finish line or get those wins, it's passing down and celebrating, with the team that helped got you there, but you carry the brunt of all of the opportunities and challenges that come along the way.
Yeah. Celebrating them, like you've heard this, right? When it goes right, the team did it.
100%.
When it goes wrong, you did it.
Yeah.
and it's like, that's not exactly true. It's just good leadership to lead that way. And so, okay. Let's go.
So moving on to your latest venture, Northstar Training Solutions.
Yes.
Give me, or give the audience your 30-second elevator pitch on like what it is that you guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it we've been talking about, but if you're a business owner and you are trapped in the daily, then I would encourage you to think about training your team. And that is what we do. Most people are not experts, and they don't have most business owners do not have time. Mm-hmm. They have the desire, but lack the time or the expertise. And that's what Northstar Training Solutions is. So we come alongside of you and we build your leadership bench so that as opportunities come your way, that you have the people to capitalize on those opportunities because you have a bench of leaders that you can move into different initiatives and directions. And that's what we do.
Wow. That's powerful, because I can't tell you how many times I have been on a consult or a strategy session with a business owner, and we start talking about, if we increased your top line revenue by 50% over the next 12 months, do you think operationally you'd be okay? And like half the time they're like, no.
Yeah, no, we don't have to.
They're like, it would add 50% more work hours to me, and I already don't have any more. So I think that's really interesting. And so you spent a good amount of time doing one-on-one coaching with business owners and leaders, and clearly you saw this gap and wanted to make this transition to more of a management and directors training program.
Yep.
What is the mission that we're trying to really accomplish with this?
Yeah. And some of it was, I saw these business owners and their lives, and their lives suck. I mean, they can't get out of it, right? They built it like you run it, and now it runs you. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to one in particular who is taking over a construction company for his dad. It's doing great. Everything's good. And I said, tell me about your leadership team. And he said, well, they're all my dad's age and they're all retiring. And I said, who do you got? And he goes, I don't have anybody. I said, have you thought about that? And he goes, no. And I said, well, and this is where Northstar Training Solutions actually started, is I said, let's just say, in the next 5 years they retire. What are you going to do? And he said, I'm in the daily. I don't have time to think about that. And I said, well, here's a truth. When leadership development becomes urgent, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like you don't grow oak trees overnight. And so you need to be in the business of developing your people so that when the opportunities come, they're already ready. And that's where that's where this came from. And then I would just say on a personal note, the church that I worked at, they invested in me deeply, and what it did to my life. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. Since then, my mom has, but I got there first.
Okay.
But you wouldn't have had a sizable trajectory for my life. But leaders at the church saw potential in me and invested in me over 20 years, to where by the time I was done, I'm running the John Maxwell Leadership Center. I'm doing all kinds of very major things. The impact that had on me and both my daughters have graduated college. Both my daughters have prestigious careers and are successful in their industries. And I would say all of that started with somebody wanting to invest in me. And I look at that and I go, man, I watch business owners. They care about their people. They care. They've built this empire, and they have people as part of the empire, and they want their people to have great lives as a part of, and for me, developing me, what it did generationally for my family, was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And is unbelievable.
No, that's
So I get fired up for that stuff, man.
That's good stuff. And I think you shared something with me one day that, I mean, I think about at least on a weekly, that our job as parents is to get our children ready for the world.
Yeah.
But once they're now young adults and they're in the world, it's our job as leaders to continue that. And that was really powerful. And I think anyone that's in management, leadership, a business owner, like that is now your, I don't want to say burden, but opportunity to wear.
Yeah. I believe that, you know, when you're a child, who has the greatest potential to positively benefit your life is your parents.
Yeah.
You know, and there's other people that can have an impact.
For sure.
Your parents are definitely positioned to have, you know, the greatest impact. And then you just go, okay, well, what about when you're 35? Who has the greatest potential to impact your life? Probably your boss, probably the owner of the business, probably if that person were to, like, think about this. When management positions open or positions higher up, if somebody just sees you as and has thought of you and developed you in that way where they see a trajectory for you, they are doing something for you that no one else can do.
Right.
And I always say to business owners, like, man, instead of like, you have it all right in front of you. They're all right here. You don't need to go. You don't need to go find them out there. The only difference between the people you got and the people that you would hire from the outside is someone else developed them.
Yeah.
And so why not you just do it? Why not like get your people? What that does for your business and loyalty and trust and all that stuff, man, it's just that's how healthy businesses think.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think, I mean, just like you, that somebody took a chance on me a long time ago and just gave me an opportunity to excel and continue to invest in me. And for that, I mean, granted, I did the work, but having somebody believe in you and push you and provide opportunity, I think is so important for just personal development and professional.
For sure, man. I was doing a thing the other day, like I was writing out, like, you know, you get to the end of your life and you're going to think about who had the greatest impact. And so I was starting to like categorize what kinds of people make the list of they had the greatest impact on my life. And one of them really high is the people who believed in me before anyone else.
Right.
The people who saw potential, who took a long-term view of who I could become and chose to invest rather than the knuckle, you know, maybe I was a knucklehead, you know, but they saw the oak from the acorn and they said, you know, I'm going to water that and I'm going to invest in that. And I really think that's, you know, if there are 7 types of people at the end of your life that you will look back and say they were the greatest impact, that's on the list for sure.
Very cool. So I know you piqued a bunch of people's interest when you talk about, you know, helping build their bench so that they can build their vision. But I also know that there are a lot of gurus out there that are completely full of shit. And clearly you've got a lot of experience in building teams over the years and a lot of different leadership type experience roles. But what are some like real tangible things, or what specific gaps are you looking to help fill with, you know, developing managers? I mean, could you maybe walk us through what does this program actually look like? What do people get?
Yeah, man. So it's a year-long program. There's 20 meetings over the course of a year.
Okay.
And so I want to walk with you. And part of and again, that's a lot of management courses are very condensed.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you condense it is because it's easier to sell, not because it's more impactful. It takes there's a lot of concepts to learn. You're not going to learn them in a 2-day seminar, you know, with it. And so part of what I've just decided to do is I'm going to do it how I think is the right way to do it, even if it makes it harder for me to sell it. And the reason is, again, you can't boil the transition from individual contributor manager down to 5 thoughts that I give you on a Saturday, and now you got them and you're off and running. And that's not it. It's a mindset change. It is larger than that. And so that's what I would say. I've really chosen to build this around what I think would be the most impactful, rather than what I think would be the easiest for me to sell. First of all, the second thing I would say is this: the concepts about the foundational concepts of learning to become the kind of leader that people choose to follow, and learning how to build the kind of culture that people want to be a part of and want to build with. Those you're not going to find those in a lot of places. They're just going to get, how to lead a performance review. And I cover all the management things, but those things are not that complicated. What's really more the deeper issues of being, again, we talked about credibility, being the kind of person that people choose to follow is harder. But I feel like I've boiled it down to something really tangible for people that is helpful to them. And so I'm really excited about it.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's other management training programs that are out there. What would you say, and it sounds like time is one of them, but what would you say is so unique about what you're doing and offers a way better value than what else is out there?
Yeah, I think, that first of all, there are probably some good programs out there. I'm not sure I've looked at all of them. I think what I do, again, I would go back and I would say building the foundation. Most programs don't do that because they've tried to condense it to make it, it's one of the things that I found with coaching. A lot of coaches have a program that they take people through, and I get why they do that. And the programs could be great, but the reason coaches build programs is it's very scalable for the coach to build the program. It's not because it's the best for the person being coached. It's the best for the coach. And at least that's how my take and how I found it. So when I did coaching, I did very custom coaching, where I want to know exactly what is going on with you so that then we can build a program specifically for you. And I feel like I'm doing the same kind of thing with this training program, where instead of just, I do have the 12-month program, but the 12-month management course. But as part of that, I'm going to be interacting with the owner. I want to build a holistic strategy of leadership development for your organization. And I feel like that's not really covered anywhere.
Okay. So in a nutshell, this isn't management or leadership training in a box.
Right.
This is, there's clearly structure to this, but this is what you and your business needs.
Yes. And the reason that the management course is, the foundation is, again, the transition from individual contributor to manager, most employers don't train their people. So I just am starting with an assumption. Everyone needs to start there and have that. Now let's talk about what are your leadership needs.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. So, foundationally, when this program first starts out, what are the key focuses before you start getting into, the tough conversations and how to run a meeting and those kind of things? What are some of the key things that you focus on right out the gate?
Yeah. I'm hitting the same things over and over again because this is what we focus on.
Yeah.
Becoming the kind of leader that people choose to follow. And that's actually, there's a moment, it's my favorite moment in the training program where I'll go around and we'll have people answer the question, why should people choose to follow you? And that moment, I love that moment. There's tears in that moment. There's honesty in that moment. There's vulnerability in that moment. And there's self-reflection in that moment. And that sets the tone for the whole course.
Yeah.
Because that moment is that's the moment where people stop thinking that my position is what makes me the leader. And they start thinking, maybe I need the qualities and I have to earn something here. And I have to do it a certain way. And just the fact that I was appointed to a position doesn't mean that I'm actually doing this right.
Yeah.
And so I love that moment. And then the second big moment is where we talk about, we start talking about the type of culture where people want to work in. For instance, the managing the tension of the friend boss realities. And some of the, I go through multiple tensions, but that one, we're all humans and we're all friends and we're okay. And there's a way in which, we're all just human beings trying to live out life. And as a boss, I want to do what's best for you as my employee, but I also feel the pressure to do what's best for the business. And those don't always play nice.
Correct.
And I am the boss, and sometimes it's decisions. And so starting to teach how to manage those tensions that people in management find themselves. Because if you go too far, friend, I don't want to work for you.
Yeah.
And if you go too far, boss, I don't want to work for you. But if you can manage that tension and several others, then you can create the kind of environment that people want to work. And again, I'd go back and say, I don't think most management courses cover anything like that.
Yeah.
I think that's I think I'm able to boil down some pretty heady concepts into some very practical, your managers can know what to do with it types of teachings.
Yeah. I love that. And I think when you take that key contributor who clearly has made friendships and has relationships at that level on the team and move them to more of a leadership type role, that is totally got to be a challenge for not only them, but the team.
Yes.
And you had shared something with me before that has actually made a lot of these conversations much easier with people, even partners that I have in business. It's like, hey, can I chat with you for a second? Like, I'm going to take my friend hat off.
Yes, hats.
And we're going to have a business conversation. And then, now I'm going to put my friend hat back on.
Yeah.
And hey, like, I really care about you and what you're going through, but we got to do this thing.
Right.
So no, I think there's been a lot of great stuff that I've even taken away from that.
That's awesome. Yeah. The hats thing is big, man. Cause it, especially hiring, we want to hire people we like, and we want to have fun with the people we do work with. But, and so I just, the simple hats thought is, if we have one hat, which is a friend hat, and then I hire you, now we have two hats. And we don't know that we can do two hats, and we're going to try. But the answer is simple. If I'm the boss, then whatever hat I'm wearing, you put on the corresponding hat. So if I choose the friend hat, you choose the friend hat. If I choose the boss hat, you choose the employee hat. And if we can't manage that, then we're going to have to pick one and remove one. And the hard part of it is I can't tell you that we're going to remove the work hat. It might be the friend one that goes. And that's always a shame, man. That's tough. And this is why I like hiring your family, because that's a hat you can't give. That's a hat you can't get rid of. And it's like, if we don't manage this work, that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. And I don't recommend hiring your family because I've had to fire my brother, my father-in-law, and it makes for some uncomfortable Thanksgivings, but it's only for a season or two, and then things go back to normal.
That's exactly what I've said to one of the guys I work with, who's got a lot of family, and it's not going great. And I just said, man, he said, what do you recommend? And I said, I recommend that you make some decisions that are going to make Thanksgiving awkward for like 2 years.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, can you share, with this program, a particular success story that a business has had? I mean, it could be the leader of the business or, the management team, just something really good that you've already seen flourish from it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, there's a construction company up in Minneapolis who's going through this program virtually, and they have completely, they are in a generational transition, and they have me and the leader, who I also coach. We have now positioned somebody to be ready to take over for every executive that's stepping out. And we have them, we've identified them. We're starting to, we don't have the transition fully done yet, but we when we started, it was, who do you got? I don't know. And now it's for every position, I see the path of the person. And we're talking about somebody to be the general manager of all of it.
Wow.
Which is, another level to this. And so, because that business owner, he's thinking maybe I take that time that I buy back and maybe I don't grow the business. Maybe I hire somebody to do that, and I go spend some time on the golf course. And that's just where he's at, and that's fine too, right? And so but I'm watching that organization be prepare for the generational change, and they're getting ready. They're 4 months into the program, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that for anybody that's in that position, or at least the prior position of not knowing who's going to take over to now within, really a short period, 4 months to having, this bench starting to get built, that's got to provide a huge sense of relief. And also, this nice aha moment where it's like, hey, we don't have to figure out how that we just operate at this level. We can actually grow this thing.
Right.
So,
yeah. And then the other one I would say, it's actually also happens to be a construction company in Georgia here. And I don't know if this is a success story. I think it is, but part of the design team, they had somebody that this is so typical. They had somebody that was underperforming and they didn't know what to do with it, with that person. And it was this, kind of maybe. And so during the course of this, it became very clear. No, the answers, we need to do the hard thing and let them go. And so they've done that. And I feel like that's a win. And that maybe doesn't feel like a win, but the first role of a leader is to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
Yep.
And so a lot of people in management or leadership are one decision away. A lot of organizations are one decision away from the next level. And a lot of times it's a human decision. And so they lack confidence. And so during the course of this training, the manager just gained the confidence to go, no, I see this right. And I see what's happening. And yeah, the employee, maybe has a point about this or that, but in the end, that's an underperforming employee and they're not, responding to the motivations. And so we need to I think that's a win.
Yeah. Well, in full transparency, like we're going through the program with, 2 teams that I captain, and we had I'm not even going to call him a toxic high performer. He used to be, but he was definitely slipping in the performance department. But it was getting to the point where I didn't even want to be around him. and I remember, we went through this, this portion of the training and through some conversation that we had, you were like, you get what you tolerate.
Yeah.
And finally, me and my other partner, Ryan, finally one day just sat him down and we're like, hey man, he rolls his eyes. He's like, oh, another conversation. I'm like, no, brother, this is the last conversation.
Yeah.
And we navigated through that. And, I've wished him well, it's like as a person, like I care about you and I want the best for you. But, for what our organization needs, like this just isn't jiving anymore. And it was crazy because we kept him for so long because he had a particular skill set that we believed we needed.
Right.
And then literally within the same day, we saw a complete turnaround in that department's morale, production, everything. And I would challenge anyone, and it can be scary, especially when someone's been with you for 15 years, like this gentleman had been with us. But I can't think of a time where I've ever let a team member go that was like that or an underperformer that I regretted. It's better for you at the end of the day. And I think it's actually better for the person too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If they're not happy, like life's short.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this is the thought that I think about a lot. There are who problems and then there are what problems. Who problems are more complicated than what problems.
Yeah.
And oftentimes our what problems are really just who problems. So for example, it's not the strategy. The strategy is fine. It's the person executing the strategy. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And if we, get a new person, same strategy, it works. A lot of times the who, we have the wrong who. And it's why I think one of the things I think COVID was so interesting. The very best strategy for uncertain future is having great people around you. Because when COVID came, no one was like, oh, I have the answers. What do you do? You look at your people and you go, guys, we friends, we need to figure this out. And so like building again, I go back to like building the right people around you and having these people that you've invested in. That's the best strategy for an uncertain future. loyal people who are really good at what they do and have been invested in and are smart leaders and all the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
That's your strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the things that, and I know some do this really well, but many do not, investing in people is one of the best investments you can make inside of an organization. Not things and processes. All that stuff can come from really great people.
Right. It just takes it. It's not natural for everyone.
Correct.
Not everyone thinks like that. And not everyone went into business to, have a bunch of, not everyone thinks like that, first of all, which is okay. And the second, not everyone's great at that.
No.
Or knows what to do with that. And so I but I do think and it does take time, I always refer to the oak tree because it's like, well, I want oaks. Okay. Well, if the best time to plant a tree, or as the Chinese proverb is 20 years ago, right. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we didn't do 20 years ago. So let's get going here and let's start investing in our people and there are ways to do that pay off great.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking into the future, with this new program and this emphasis on, management and director development, is there still a possibility that you do one-on-one coaching with business leaders?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And again, I see them being very complementary to each other.
Yeah.
Because, again, a lot of the organizations that I work with, and I think I will work with, are organizations where the owner is drowning in the daily. And what they desperately need is manage people around them that they can pass the daily, drivers of the organization. And in that moment, now you have your time back. And what you do with that time is what makes you grow.
Correct.
And that's where coaching comes in one-on-one for that leader. Is now let me talk about what do we do to get you to the next level and have the breakthroughs. And so, there's a coaching element right there. But the first step, again, it's why I focused on the management course. I got tired of coaching people who it was all great ideas they couldn't get to. It was just great ideas that were ended up on a whiteboard somewhere or on a MacBook somewhere. And then a month later we're looking and they're going, oh, well, I had this and I had that and this and that and this and that and this and that. And it's like, you know what, let's deal with this and that. Yeah. And let me get you, if I could get you 5 hours a week back, now let's take those 5 hours and double your business.
Yeah.
Cause it's not 30 hours back. You can get that, but 5 hours back, 5 hours of really good executive level, owner level thinking and growing. That's most people don't have that. And that's a game changer.
Yeah. Well, I'm pumped about the program and what you're doing. And I've loved what our teams have gone through so far. Is there anything else that you want to share about Northstar with everybody, or you think we've pretty much?
Dude, I think we've hit it, man. I appreciate the time, Dustin, and having me on here. And no, I'm excited to see where this thing goes. It's fairly new, but I'm looking and it's going, this thing is working and it's awesome. And I can't wait to see who jumps in next and how that goes. And so I'm pumped, man.
Yeah, well, I'm pumped too. And I love one of the things that you share that I think is going to be so different, which is extremely important for anybody listening or interested in this. This is not manager in a box where, Miles is looking to just scale this thing infinitely by plugging you into an online program. This is one-on-one time with Miles and your team. And clearly he's only got so much time like the rest of us. So if you're thinking about this, I would encourage you to have a conversation with him. I've got a lot of experience in doing this kind of stuff, building teams and whatnot. And I've learned a ton over the last couple of months, and it's been really foundationally helpful for our team in gearing us, up for another season of growth. So, man, other than that, I appreciate your time too. It's been great today unpacking this. And then for everybody listening, we will put Miles' contact information inside of the show notes. So you'll be able to, get a hold of him on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as check out his new website that's about to launch. So awesome. Appreciate everybody. And from Dustin and Miles from Life by the Horns, see you. Bye.
Yeah, let's see how you do under pressure. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay, hey, yeah, ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm. I get to the paper, boy. Extra, extra.